Hey everybody, welcome to your readings for the week. These are the readings for the week ending February 25th. So the last full week of February, we're into Pisces season now. Yeah, things are just moving along like they do. So we're gonna go ahead and get to it. We're gonna start with Darcy. This is our last week of that square between Uranus and Mercury, which is in Aquarius. We've had just a full year of something in Aquarius being squared with Uranus and Taurus. It's been a nightmare on this side as well. I'll just tell you that right now. Next week, it basically breaks up next Sunday, so you'll have one more day of it and then it breaks up, and so that's good. We'll talk about that next week. This week focus continues to be on the trauma closet. Uranus's influence is definitely in that trauma closet as well. Mercury's focus is on long-term goals. So I kind of see this playing out a little bit in terms of having some trouble either setting your long-term goals or getting through to the next stages of your long-term goals, if that makes sense. And a lot of that could be stuff that's happened before that's just it's coming up and it's plaguing you, and it's always a good excuse for, of course this always happens to me, that's why I don't bother with my making any goals, because nothing ever happens, because somebody always comes in and screws it up. It's very common for us to do that and to sort of create those excuses or turn these situations into excuses to prove that we can't get where we want to be. And in all honesty, I think that that's really the biggest human foible that we have. I mean, there's bigger ones, I'm sure, but in terms of success, that's the biggest thing that gets in the way of most people's success, is that um I wouldn't call it laziness, I would call it fear. And fear of success is just as much of a thing as fear of failure is. In fact, it's worse. I think in many cases we don't necessarily know what success is going to look like, and that's kind of scary. If you're looking to move up in your career, if you're looking to get a promotion, it sounds really exciting when you're just looking at making more money. It becomes really scary when you look at all the different new responsibilities there are. And so even though that extra money might be really good for you, you may not pursue it because of the fear around the extra responsibilities or the new responsibilities. So it is a thing. It's a thing that most humans go through, and I think fixed signs go through it the most because we really resist change, and you can't live in this world and resist change, because if you look at the evolution of the world, it has changed. So it's going to keep changing. There's really nothing we can do about that. I feel that this is going to promote also some triggers to come up a little bit, specifically at the end of the week when the moon moves into Taurus and moves into conjunction with Uranus. So it really becomes a part of that square with Mercury as well. And when you've got the moon and you've got emotions pointed at your trauma closet, that means emotional stuff is coming out. That means triggers are coming up. And kind of feel that some of these are anger triggers as well. At least that's what I'm picking up. I sort of feel also that part of this has to do with feeling like you're being used or put upon, if that makes sense. So for instance, you could be taking on responsibilities but not exactly getting paid for it. These are responsibilities that are out of your scope of responsibilities, but you're doing it for all the right reasons. You're hoping that you're doing it to be able to promote yourself and to move forward in your job, but it kind of feels right now like you're not getting promoted. It's just more like you're being used. And that could also be amplified by triggers that are coming up of different situations that have made you feel the same way. So there's a couple of things about that. One, you want to separate the current situation from the triggers. If you don't do that, what tends to happen is you put yourself in a situation where you're overreacting to a point that's dangerous, as in like you could lose your job. And it's not really overreacting. If you're angry about something, you're angry about something. You should absolutely say something. But if you're approaching that with a bunch of anger that has nothing to do with the situation, then you could be in danger of overreacting. That's where that comes from. The other thing I feel is because of the fact that Mercury is part of this square, it may feel like you're unable to communicate the problem. So you're in the situation, you're trying to talk to the boss is never available, always too busy, seems to be putting you off. That's also very frustrating, and also will bring up a lot of triggers of other situations where people have done that to you. So it's a good idea, if triggers are coming up, of course, to deal with those triggers at another time. When it comes to the current situation, the best advice that I have on that is to get the person's attention and make an appointment and hold them accountable for that appointment as well. That way you're approaching it from a very professional standpoint, which if it's work, obviously you want to approach it from a professional standpoint anyways. You'll definitely get your point across a lot easier. The other thing that I feel is really important is to work on what you're going to say. So you don't want to get angry and then with your anger communicate about this. Okay, it's going to come out disorganized. It's going to sound like you're just complaining. It's not going to come out in a way that is going to be helpful to the situation. That's also why making an appointment is a good idea, because you have an appointment, you know when you need to sit down with the person, and then you can sit down and write some notes, and you have point by point by point why you feel you should be getting a raise for the extra responsibility, or why you feel that responsibility should be put on somebody else because you're not willing to do the work unless you're getting paid for it. That way you stand a better chance of getting what you want, rather than just constantly getting angry and having people ignore that because unfortunately it's just not important to them in the moment. And that happens all the time. It's not that you're not important necessarily. It has, I feel, a lot more to do with the fact that people are very self-centered. They're focused on what they need to do, and they're not necessarily focused on anybody else's needs until you make it a priority for them to focus on it. And they will avoid it like the plague until they can't avoid it anymore, because that's what people do. We all do it. We all avoid things that are unpleasant for us, or what have you. So you're just dealing with the same thing that we all do anyways, is what that comes down to. So yes, one more week of feeling like there's something in the way between you and what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. But after this week, things are going to open up, and it's going to seem like a whole different world. So that's what I have for you, Darcy. And I'm going to move on to Jeannette. No moon this week. We are kicking off the week with the moon next week, so enjoy your moon free week, because it's coming next week. We continue to have Mars, of course, in Gemini. Mars continues to be in a trine with Mercury throughout this week as well. Mars's focus is also on inner trauma. So while Gemini's focus is on self, Mars's focus is on inner trauma. So we're really looking at improving ourselves by bringing up this inner anger and this inner trauma in order to let go of it, and so it doesn't hold us back anymore. It's not a fun process. Nobody likes the process, but it is what it is, unfortunately. Mercury's focus is on long-term goals. Now, I feel like at this stage of your life right now, you've got some planning, you have some ideas, you kind of know which direction you want to go in. I kind of feel like part of the anger from the past that's coming up really does have to do with your injury. I mean, you're doing pretty much back to normal. I'm kind of seeing there is, a sense of where you need to slow down a little bit here and there. In fact, your neck is slowing you down, and I feel that that's part of that past anger that is coming up. I'm sure there's a lot of anger around the surgeries and what happened around the surgeries, and the fact that it's taking as long as it is for you to recover because of all the things that you've gone through, blah 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 blah. We could go on and on and on. It's time to let that anger go. I think this is what's really coming up for you this week, is that it is only going to hold you back, and it's going to affect your healing process. So when you are holding on to a lot of anger, it will sort of slow down the healing process. And the more frustrated you get, the more anger you hold here in your shoulders. Obviously, you need to be relaxed in order for that healing process to work. So the more tense you are up here and the more angry you are, the more it is going to affect your neck and hurt your neck. Actually, that could be a very valuable tool for you from here on out, honestly. If you choose to use it. Mars does also continue to be in a square with Neptune, and Neptune's focus is on career. Neptune is all about intuition, and I feel like this frustration is blinding you from using your intuition. It's the best way that I can describe that. It's making it so that you really can't see through the frustration and the anger to see what your intuition is trying to tell you, if that makes sense. So the sooner in the week you can work through that and let it go, the better for you. It will help you to move forward in your plans. The other thing that I'm really picking up on is you have plans and you have goals. That's great, but you also have about a million other ideas that keep coming up, and it's very typical of Geminis to overthink things. And when you overthink things, or another idea comes up and another thing comes up, you never follow through with any of it, is why it gets in the way. Because you start to put work into something and then you get another idea and you move on to that idea. So bottom line, I think for this, really, it really kind of revolves around picking one thing and sticking with that one thing. And the more you can do that, the more successful you'll be in terms of finding that one thing. If you get another idea that seems better later, by all means, write it down and try it out later. Or try it out at the same time. You can always work towards two goals at the same time. That always works too. You just don't want to overload yourself with a million ideas and not a whole lot to go by in terms of actually doing something about those ideas. So organize your thoughts as much as possible, if that is such a thing. And that's what I have for you. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Connie. We've got no planets in Leo this week, so that's good. Focus is on the mind and how you think. We've talked a lot about sorry. Okay. Wasn't sure if somebody was coming in here. We've talked a lot about mindset and how your mindset plays into what you're doing. the term stinking thinking is the one that I like to use the most in terms of showcasing the kind of thought process that really is negative and doesn't get you to move forward very well. I feel like a couple of things are coming out of this for you. First of all, I want to say too much thinking, overthinking. It's exhausting you. It's confusing you in some ways. It's complicating things. I feel like also, and I'm sort of seeing this in terms of looking at your entire schedule for the next 3 weeks, and whereas as opposed to looking at your schedule for the week, looking at what you have to deal with just for tomorrow, just for today, things like that. When you look at everything, it gets overwhelming, and that's a lot of work. When you're looking at what I have to do today, it's a bit of work, but it doesn't really feel like it's as much work, if that makes sense. So maybe even scaling down how you look at things may help you to have a bit of a healthier mindset. Same thing with the family situation. Not that I want to harp on that. We've done a lot of work on mindset around these particular situations, which you've done a fantastic job, by the way. In case I haven't told you lately, you've done a fantastic job with that. We've done a lot of work on that, and you've come really, really far with that. That doesn't mean that when something happens and it makes you mad that you failed either. You have a right to be angry. Spend some time being angry, and then change your mindset on it from there. It'll help you to let the current situation go. We don't have to let everything go, but if we let the current situation go, it doesn't feel like you're holding on to so many things, especially if the current situation is frustrating and annoying rather than heartbreaking, if that makes sense. So in terms of your focus being on the mind and how you think, these are just a couple of things that are coming up for me, coming up for you through me, maybe, that might be helpful so that you're not either getting in that, as we've called it, the merry-go-round, where you're just going round and round and round on the same thing, or so scattered with so many things that you can't focus on any one thing. Also, I don't know if you have started to try this. Part of me says you have. I don't know if you have started to try this or not, but meditation is really, really powerful. It helps you to quiet your mind. It helps you to force your brain to focus on something different for a change. And by doing so, it does help. It does relax you. You're not quite so exhausted. It helps you to focus on what you need to do. It helps you to relax and fall asleep if you need to relax and fall asleep. There's a million meditations on YouTube. Go through them until you find one that is comfortable for you and that fits with you and that seems to work for you, if that makes sense. And that's what I have for you, Connie. And I'm going to move on to Jenny. Again, no planets in Leo this week. Focus is on the mind and how you think about things. There's a couple of things actually that are coming up for me for you. Mm. Mm. It's a fresh cup. It's always the best. Couple of things coming up around this. First things first, you're not resting if your brain's not resting. So I know you know this. I know it's redundant for me to tell you, but I feel like this week there's just so much shit going on in there. It's very important that when you're not working, not focused on your responsibilities, not planning your next career move, that you're resting, you're not thinking about all of these things. It makes you crazy. It really does. And if you're feeling like this year you're just so much more tired than you ever have been before, it's not just what's going on. It has to do with your ability to shut this off. And it's not easy. It's not like flipping a, well, it can be as easy as flipping a switch. Not at first, but it can be as easy as flipping a switch over time, once you practice doing that. But anything that you can do to promote an empty head. Bad joke, sorry. But I love an empty head, because an empty head means quiet, it means silence, it means you know, I love my alone time a lot, but you're never alone when this is going a mile a minute. So I really feel that that's important every single day, to actively be focused on shutting your brain down. You're not thinking about what you need to do tomorrow. You're not thinking about what you need to do an hour from now. You're not thinking, about anything but the fact that you're resting right now, and you're resting your mind, and you're meditating to turn that off. When I do my ground and bubble at night, and actually when I do my ground and bubble anytime, that's part of my ground and bubble, is to turn this off. So if you do a lot of grounding and bubbling, which I hope you do, maybe add that to your grounding and bubbling, and be very focused on that as well. A lot of people, I don't think you're one of them, but a lot of people are afraid that if they do that, the thoughts aren't going to come back. That's a control problem. That's not your problem. Of course, those things are going to come back. They're still in there. You're just saying, I don't want it up front right now. I want to file it away until I need it, because I'm not, there's no reason for me to be focused on it currently right this minute, kind of a thing. So that's one thing that's coming up with that. The other thing I feel that is important right now is, I still see you in two different places. And what I mean by that is, you either haven't made a decision, and I know we've talked about there was a decision that you need to make. Either you haven't made a decision yet, or in some crazy way you're trying to make it so that both work together, if that makes sense. And I'm not seeing that working out for you. So I'm kind of sort of leaning towards, yes, you'll make a decision, but after tax season, which is a nice compromise. And if that is the case, then you got to put it away until after tax season, and not, I feel like this other opportunity, taking it, not taking it, whatever, it keeps coming up in your mind, and it's almost like there's guilt there, and you just, you made a decision, you got to let that go, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Linda, my resident Virgo, focus continues to be on the home. Not surprising, since you're moving. Actually, I feel like you are actively moving right now, and I think it's possible. Actually, yeah, we're meeting this week too, or we should be meeting this week. Or is that maybe move? Because you're moving, that's okay. There's a couple of things here that are coming up with this. First of all, organization. I feel like that you're going through an organization nightmare this week. In terms of how you want things organized, and the best way for them to be organized, because you need a certain amount of organization in order to really focus on what you need to do. So there's the household organization part of it, but you're also trying to balance your work schedule while you're trying to move at the same time, and it just, it's a little bit kind of crazy. In fact, I literally see you going You need to give yourself a break. Number one, you need to give yourself a break. And I know you're not giving yourself a break, because when you are, when it's finally that time at the end of the day to go, oh, I need to sit down and relax, and all of a sudden you do, and it's just like this, and then you open your eyes and you look over here and you look over there and you go, oh my God, I need to do something about that. And then you get right up and you start running around and doing, and I wish I had half that energy to get things, or motivation. Actually, it's not energy, it's motivation. I wish I had half of it to get things done, because, well, I just don't. Anyways, it's good, but you don't want to burn yourself out. And that's what I'm really feeling, is that there is a definite possibility of you doing that. And that's not going to be good if you do. It's actually going to slow things down a whole heck of a lot more. So please keep that in mind if you can. The other thing that I'm really picking up for you coming up this week is a drink of coffee. No, that's not what I'm seeing for you this week. But what I am seeing is I actually am feeling help from a surprising source, if that makes sense. Like somebody popping up to help you out that was not the help that you planned, if that makes sense. But it's good help. It's definitely something that is helpful to you, and is it's a good surprise. So I'm happy to see that. It's, I don't know if it's like one of your sons-in-law or something like that, but I do see a male who's just literally just shows up. Here I am, what do you need me to do, kind of a thing. So at least for one day, maybe two, you'll be able to get through things a little bit quicker, because you will have the help to do it. You know, certain things like moving things that are heavy and getting things, you know, put away a little bit quicker, if that makes sense. Yes, I do see your daughter being there as well, off and on. But I feel like that just that extra set of hands really makes a huge difference, and probably for a day or two, and then you know, and then they kind of got to go and do what they need to do. So that's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Matalyn, focus is on the home this week. And well, well. I'm sort of seeing this. I know what I know. And while what I know happened last week, which by the time you see this is 2 weeks ago, I don't see that it has changed a whole lot either at this particular point. In some cases, I feel like the last thing you want to do is be at home. But in other cases, it's like, if you're not at home, then what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Kind of a thing. And it's not that you have nowhere to go, but it's more like very difficult, I would say, to deal with the challenges that are going on around home right now, if that makes sense. First of all, I don't see leaving home. And I just see you maybe spending a little less time at home, if that makes sense, because it's easier for you to separate yourself from the situation than have to be in it. Even your room, you know, going into your room is not necessarily solitude at this point. It makes you available, and you're not necessarily wanting to be available right now, and that's understandable. I also feel a lot of, I don't know what to do about these certain situations, and these certain situations, if it's somebody else's issue, there isn't really a whole lot you can do, especially in a situation like this. I would say the best thing that you can do is talk to somebody, preferably a professional. I want to say that in the last year, you've been through the ringer. There's been a lot of stuff that has taken place. Your life has changed completely from what it was. That's not easy to do. And sometimes we need help. And I've talked to your mother about doing therapy. I've talked to your father about doing therapy. I'm now talking to you about doing therapy. Not because you're crazy and you need it, but because there are things that you need to get out. And the best person to get those things out with is somebody who is completely disconnected from the situation, like a therapist. They will also help you to be, with different techniques that will help you to kind of work through what you're going through right now. Outside of that, I actually see an opportunity presenting itself this week. And I feel like it's an amazing opportunity. It's a really exciting opportunity. But I also feel like all the stuff that's going on around you may influence the decision to take this opportunity. And I want to tell you that it should not. This is an opportunity that is being presented to you for a reason. You should take it, regardless of what anybody else has to say about it. And I'm not saying that anybody else's feelings shouldn't be taken into consideration. I'm saying that this is your decision. And it's a pretty big decision. But it's your decision. And I have a feeling if you don't take it, you may regret it. So in any case, reach out and talk to me if you need to. And that's what I have for you, my dear. Moving on to Theresa, focus continues to be on those you love. Ceres continues to be retrograde and focus right on the cusp of the home and those you love. And with Ceres being retrograde, I feel there's a couple of things that are coming up around this. First of all, I really see some missing your grandbaby. I mean, like really missing him. And I don't feel like you don't see him ever or anything like that. It's just maybe it's missing your son, which translates into missing your grandson. You can't hold your son, but you can hold, pardon me, your grandson, if that makes sense. And I'm actually seeing a lot of focus around him right now. Whether that's because you're concerned about him or it's his birthday. I don't know when his birthday is. But something. It's like he's taking up a lot of your focus right now. This is okay. There's nothing bad about that necessarily until worrying about him takes over your whole life, and then we have a little bit of a concern there. But I just feel sometimes needing that closeness with your son tends to be interpreted as time with your grandson, if that makes sense, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I think sometimes maybe you feel like you're too much, not too much for him, but maybe too much for his mom, or the family in some way. And that's kind of their issue, really. And if it is an issue, they should talk to you about it, instead of not, or maybe you should talk to him about it. Is this an issue? And kind of see what happens. That way you're not just sort of feeling like you're spending too much time. You're open and communicating and willing to work with them, if that makes sense. It does make it all a lot easier for everybody. The other thing that I feel is going on this week is I really feel like there's changes being made in your home. I'm not sure if you're making these changes because of an addition, moving, or somebody else moving into the home and you're accommodating somebody else, or it's just time to kind of change things up a bit, if that makes sense. I don't know. I do that a lot just because I used to move a lot when I was a kid. So I can't stand things to be the same. So I've got to move them around, kind of a thing, and create this brand new environment for myself. But I actually feel like this has more to do with settling in, and making the home a home. I don't feel like you've had a lot of time to do that over the last few months. And when time opens up, you're starting to sort of put these things into place, if that makes sense. So spending some time organizing and decorating and just sort of making the space yours, if that makes sense. It seems like a really good week for that. So that's what I have for you, Theresa. Moving on to Regina, focus for Scorpio continues to be on your day-to-day schedule. I see a couple of things coming up with that. One, I feel that somebody needs to understand that your time is your time and not their time, if that makes sense. And I don't feel like this is necessarily coming from a family member or your significant other. I mean, that may be a thing. But I actually feel this is coming from work, where it just sort of feels like, or you're in a situation that starts to feel like they own your time and you just have to deal with that. And the truth is that you need some space and you need some time, and you may have to fight for that day off this week, number one. Number two, I feel like this has come up before, but I'm going to bring it up again. I kind of feel like there isn't a whole lot of time in your schedule for things you enjoy doing, if that makes sense. And you don't need like a ton of time necessarily. I mean, if you enjoy gardening, you can put 10-15 minutes a day into that and still get what you enjoy, out of the day. But yeah, I sort of feel like your entire existence or your entire schedule is almost revolving around somebody else or somebody else's needs, whether they be work needs or home responsibilities or what have you. And when you do have a little bit of time, it's very easy for somebody to come in and say, well, you're not doing anything, so you might as well go ahead and come and do what I want to do. And no, okay. Not all the time anyways. I really feel like this week that may be a problem. And as much as you don't like to stand up and go, hey, you know what? I am doing something. I'm relaxing because that's what I have allocated for right now. If you don't do that, they're just going to keep on taking it. So, a lot of times trying to just make it easier for everybody else winds up backfiring on you. And I just don't feel this week that you're willing to let that happen. And good for you. So that's what I have for you, Regina. Moving on to Theresa Sheppard. Focuses on your day-to-day schedule this week. I do see a pretty busy week for you this week. Lots of travel, not a whole lot of home time happening this week. I see some changes though that have taken place in terms of the work and what you do. Maybe even some additional trips or some additional destinations have been added to your schedule as well. So pretty busy schedule, not a whole lot of time for you in there, which is why it's very important to make time for you in there as much as you possibly can, or the time that you do have, make sure it's quality time. I feel like meditation is really important this week. I feel like it's really important around the times that are particularly frustrating, specifically around travel times. As hard as it is to sit in an airport surrounded by people and close your eyes and meditate for a minute, it's very useful every now and then, because it does just help sort of keep the balance, so you're not so frustrated about the things that are going on around you. It is possible to get to a point where you are in a room that is crowded and people are screaming at each other and you can block it all out. It's amazing, trust me. You've had children, you know how to do it. In fact, actually, that's another thing that's coming up is just noise. It's like constant noise. It's almost like even when you're by yourself, you're hearing noise. That means you're not grounding and you're not bubbling and you're not disconnecting from everything that's going on around you and the energy that's going on around you. So if you need that ground and bubble video again, let me know. But if you're watching this, it's on this channel in my informational videos. Go over to that, kind of take a look at that and relearn how to ground and bubble, whatever you need to do. Grounding and bubbling is essential when you're having to deal with a lot of people. Even if you're not interacting with all these people, they're still in your space, right? And so you're siphoning off of them, they're siphoning off of you. When I ground and bubble, all of that doesn't happen. It's like I'm in my own little space, they're all in another space. I'm not picking up anything from them, I'm not wanting to pick up anything from them, they're not picking up anything on me. They kind of just sort of leave me alone and let me do my thing. And that works for me, because sometimes you just need that space. And even in a crowded airport that is ridiculous and everybody is screaming and pissed off, I can still maintain my mood and my energy just by being in my bubble. So that is something that you should definitely be utilizing. I mean, every day, honestly, but definitely be utilizing it this week. I'm also picking up on somebody, and I'm not sure if this is a client or somebody that you work with. It's like you're exhausted every time you have to deal with them. This is not a family member. This is somebody that you're either working with or working for. Part of it is their energy. Their energy is just kind of scattered and all over the place. Part of it is I don't want to use the word narcissist, but there are some narcissistic tendencies with this person. They just seem to feed off of everybody, and you don't want them to be taking your energy all day long. So make sure you put up a nice healthy bubble around them. Let them use their own energy to do what they're doing. They don't need to be siphoning off of you. It also helps to protect you from the little digs, the little things that come up that they're saying that are just frustrating and annoying. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. There's jealousy there, or there's just some sort of I'm better than you and I have to prove it by, it's the normal crap that people pull. You put that bubble up, especially those, I call it a reflective bubble. It's like a two-way mirror. You can see through one side, but you get a reflection on the other side. You put that reflection on the outside, anything that they throw at you, it just bounces back at them. It frustrates the hell out of them. Which, if you want my opinion, is sort of part of the fun. So yeah, that's what I have for you to Theresa. And I am moving on to Jillian, who's first timer on the list here. So Scorpio's focus is on your day-to-day schedule, my dear. For you, I see a couple of things. Too much time on your hands cannot necessarily be a good thing, just as much as not having enough you time, if that makes sense. It gets boring, you start to get confusing, you get lost, you don't know which way you're going to turn, you don't know which direction you're going to go in. It's too much time thinking, and I feel like that's been a thing. It's a thing for everybody, but I feel like that's been a thing lately. And on one hand, it's not necessarily a bad thing. If your thinking and your processing is moving you in the right direction, but if it is stopping you from moving, then it's not helpful to you. So there's a couple of things actually coming up with that. I feel like you feel better when you're using your time constructively, in a way. I know I feel better when I'm using my time constructively. You get, I want to say, you get less tired. You do get tired, but it's a different kind of tired. It's like I'm exhausted and really gonna sleep, instead of having like a broken sleep tired, or sleeping all the time tired, or what have you. I also feel like you're searching for something that, I don't want to say this. I don't want to say you're searching for something that makes you happy, but you're searching for something that sort of gives you a purpose, if that makes sense. And so I feel like, I know that you signed up for school. I'm not sure if you're continuing to do that. I hope you are. But if your focus on what you're doing isn't exactly like, oh my God, this is what I'm meant to do, you might want to think about changing what your major is, or what classes you're taking, if that makes sense. I really feel that one of your biggest strengths is you are such a nurturer. You always have been such a nurturer ever since you were a little girl. And while I don't necessarily see that nurturing in as in nurturing humans, not that you don't want to do that, but I am really sort of being pulled toward animals and the nurturing that comes from that. And I see a lot of fear around dealing with sick animals. But I also know that that everything hurts, and that's part of what makes you is your healing hands. And you may not be able to save a life, but you can make a life more comfortable in the end, if that makes sense. Anyways, Auntie is saying, I see you working with animals. And I feel like that might be something that you want to pursue. Even if it's something that, say, you're looking to work at a groomer place, or you're looking to go to school to specifically work with animals, if that makes sense. And you don't necessarily need to be a vet or a vet tech either. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can work with animals without necessarily having to go through all that schooling. It's just the schooling guarantees you a heck of a lot more money than, say, reception at the at the vet's office or the groomers or what have you. But I just feel that when you're not nurturing other people, or when you're not nurturing, and when you're not nurturing, putting that nurturing out there, I feel like that's part of your depression, is because you're also denying yourself the energy that you want to put into the world, because you're afraid that the world is going to come and bite you back, because you've been bitten so many times in your life. The truth is, and this is what I've learned and what I teach others, life is painful. Love is painful. You cannot have love without pain in some shape or form. Grief is a big part of that. But the biggest lesson in this life, I have been told by my guides, is to be able to love despite the pain. And that is where we succeed, no matter what. And that doesn't mean that we're never going to have pain ever again either, because that's just not realistic. Unfortunately, we're here and people die, and you know that better than anybody else, because you've experienced it more than anybody else should. And that's, unfortunately, that's the challenge. The other challenge is to appreciate those people while they're here before they go. And that's always something that, when somebody passes, it's really easy to do. And then you get wrapped up in your own stuff and you forget. And I'm not saying you specifically do, everybody does that. Okay. So bottom line is that I feel like direction is really a big thing for you, and to find the right direction. Once you find the right direction, it does become a little bit easier, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, along with a whole bucket of hugs and kisses. And we are moving on to, I think it's Sheri. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. No planets in Sagittarius, focuses on relationships. You know what I think, and what's coming to mind right now is, this is a great opportunity to focus on your relationship with Sheri. It's kind of scary. You got to be honest. If you don't have a good relationship with yourself, you cannot have a decent relationship with anybody else. I think when we're younger, it's easier to trick ourselves. As we get older, it becomes less easy to trick ourselves, because we see more of a reality as we get older than we do when we're younger. And I also feel that as we get older, we really try and hold on to that old reality when we're younger, and it just doesn't work. It just does not work. I can't even describe how it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I feel like it's time to really be honest about your relationship with yourself, not looking at false ego, false love, any of those things, to really understand what makes Sheri tick. And you can't do that with another person. That is something that is a journey that is for you and you alone. You would have somebody help you with it, but nobody has anything to do with it. That makes sense. I also feel that this is necessary in order for you to continue to explore your other relationships moving forward, if that makes sense. Like, I really feel that you are in a situation where you have to do this. There is no other way. You're backed in a corner. You've tried to do it the easy way all this time. You can't do that anymore. And you're at that space. It just went from Yeah, it would be a good idea to do this. You're not moving forward unless you do. I also want to say that when you explore this relationship with Sheri, I mean, I think Sheri's cool. I like to hang out with Sheri. There are things about Sheri that I'm not wild about. I'm sure there's things about me that Sheri's not wild about, but it's okay because we can make those things work together. Um, and I feel that there are a lot of things that you're going to find that just kick ass about yourself. And but you're also going to find ways that you are hindering those things from growing. And that's where the fear comes in. I know you know what I'm talking about. I know you know that I know everything. I do love you despite all of that. But I'm not happy with it either, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I see your potential. I see what you can do. I see how you can be great. And I see what you're doing to screw that up. And don't think that I'm not looking in my own mirror, because I am. But what I'm doing is just a little bit less destructive to myself and the people around me than what you're doing. Okay, sorry. Destructive in a different way. Thanks, Mom. Um, I love you and I want to see you succeed. And in order to do that, you really need to take a hard look at your relationship with yourself and what you're willing to do to make positive changes to get to where you want to go. That's what I have for you. Moving on to Peg. No planets in Sagittarius, focuses on relationships. What's your relationship with coffee? I bet you don't drink coffee anymore either. I know you don't eat sugar. I'm gonna say you probably ixnayed the caffeine too. um I want to say that this week's focus really is about building the right relationships. Not just building, but exploring your current relationships as well, the relationships around business. I kind of feel, and I think that we go through this often as humans. It's a time to sort of look at all of those relationships we built around business to see which ones are currently helpful, which ones have maybe kind of outlived their usefulness, if that makes sense. Which ones are destructive. I don't think that you hold on to the destructive ones for very long these days, actually. I really see that you've learned that lesson more than once. No, I'm not saying that you don't learn your lessons, not at all. What I am saying is, as usual, it's happened more than once. So you've learned that lesson more than once. But I do feel like there's a particular relationship around business that was extremely helpful at one time, and then all of a sudden just wasn't. And you've been nice enough to give this person some space to kind of work through their stuff and hope that they come back to the person that they were before. But I just don't feel like you should be waiting anymore. Like I don't see it happening anytime soon, or that relationship is going to be exactly the way it was before. And I think that there's a lot of circumstances that have changed, and that's why. And it may just be that this is a person to be friends with, but not necessarily somebody to work with, if that makes sense. I also am seeing another person coming in. or, you know, another person being introduced into your life at this point that may provide something a little bit more solid, if that makes sense. I'm also seeing you, I really see something, you working with your hands. And no, I know what this is. There's a lady that I knew locally here, and she passed away last year. She made angels, and mine broke, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd be able to show you the little angel that she made for me, and I was so sad that it broke, and that she died. But she made these adorable little, they were about this big, and she made all kinds with beads and stuff like that. And she just gave them away. She didn't sell them. It wasn't about the money, it wasn't about anything but releasing these angels and sort of giving them to other people. And I feel like she's here with me for you, because you've always been the angel lady. At least to me, you've always been the angel lady. And she came in, and she didn't do readings or connect with spirit or angels or anything. She just made these little angels and sort of released them. And I want to say that one of the hardest things in terms of making money doing what we do, one of the hardest things to deal with is the fact that we either need to be centered on how much we need to get done to make money, or we need to be focused on healing the world, which doesn't make any money, right? And so I want to say a balance in this. I almost feel like there are people that you're coming across in your journeys that need this healing. And in many cases, you just give it to them, send it to them, what have you. But it's not, well, that makes you feel good to do that. It's not helping you financially. And so I feel like there's either an aspect of another line of income coming in that allows you to just do this when you're pulled to do it and not have to rely on it, or I feel like it's like you've got some ideas going on of bringing in an extra income while you're doing this, if that makes sense. What I feel and you shouldn't do is give that up, because it's something that you're putting into the world. It's not for you. It's literally like, I see you as she's releasing the angels. That's exactly what I'm seeing you doing, is you're releasing angels into the world. You're providing that space, you're providing that healing, and it is needed right now. It's needed more than ever right now, because we're not just talking about physical healing here anymore. We're talking about a whole lot of emotional and mental healing. People are literally being programmed in a way that you and I both know is not healthy for them. And I'm not saying we need to counteract what, the bad people are doing, but in a way, it helps. It helps people to stay true to who they are. And it's also a way for us to try and help balance out what's going on in this crazy world. It's hard being a spiritual person in this overly chaotic, negative, narcissistic ridiculousness that the world has become all of a sudden. And that's a good way for us to have something to do about it without actually going in there and trying to do something about it, if that makes sense, which promotes frustration because there really is nothing that we can do. So that's what I have for you. I'm sorry, that's what I and my friend who made the angels, Carmen, have for you. And finally, I'm moving on to Mama Sheri. Focuses on relationships this week. The most important relationship being with you and your cat, of course. little Tabitha, I just talked to you maybe 2-3 weeks ago. She's probably like twice as big as she was when I talked to you last time, because they grow up so fast. But yes, focus is on relationships this week. There's a couple of things that I feel are coming up around that this week. First of all, a lot of gratitude. I don't see anything bad. I see a lot of gratitude. I see you looking around and going, boy, am I really lucky to have the people that I have in my life, which is awesome. And actually, I feel more that this week really has a lot to do with um making sure those people know it, if that makes sense. And it doesn't take a lot um for you to do that, even if it's saying that you appreciate it, which you do a lot. But I also feel like there's a million little ways that you show your appreciation to people, and I know that that's very important to you, and it should be. It should be very important to everybody, honestly. But I see you doing that. I'm also seeing a very difficult relationship that you're taking the time to sit and process. And I'm not saying that this is a relationship that you can just walk away from, because it really isn't. Um, but rather than getting frustrated about it, I see you taking the time as an empath, as the empath that you are, to really come to terms and understand why this person is the way that they are, so that you can approach the relationship in a different way, a way that might be a little bit more successful to you, if that makes sense. You're not dealing with as many problems with this person. I think a lot of times people create problems just because they want to be heard and no one's listening. And while that sucks, um, it is a valid thing. And when we understand that, and step outside of our being angry about it, it makes things easier all the way around, easier for you and for them as well. So, other than tons and tons of kisses and cuddles from that cute little kitty, that's what I have for you. And that's what I have for everybody. Thank you so much. I'm Melissa Bruce, the heavy metal psychic. You guys make it a great week. No matter what happens, it's up to you to make it a great week, everybody. I will see you next week.